Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast and increase your financial wisdom. You will find episodes about investments, the infinite banking concept, how to fight inflation, the financial side of retirement, and financial questions Jesse asked his girlfriend. Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast on any podcast platform or watch it on YouTube. There are new episodes of the Wealth Talks podcast weekly. Search for Wealth Talks podcast online and subscribe for free.
Shooters, hunters, and outdoor enthusiasts, Emax Tactical has you covered. We offer specialty, exotic, and vintage ammunition you won't find anywhere else. Plus, field medical kits and civilian legal training. Emax Tactical is passionate about helping customers find exactly what they need. 90% of orders go out the same day. Visit Emax Tactical online and use code TODD for 10% off your first order. Visit us at emaxtactical.com. EMACStactical.com.
Attention, you're listening to the Todd Huff Radio Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk radio. Be advised that the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. Here's your conservative, but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
Well, my friends, Donald Trump is the first, dictator in history to go about his business of becoming an authoritarian, dictatorial thug, if you listen to the narrative that's out there by the left, by the Democrat Party. First dictator in history to try to go about accumulating more power by reducing the size, the scope, and the power of our federal government. His plan, of course, his master plan to become king for life in the United States of America is to return power to the states. I find that to be an interesting way for Trump to institute fascism, but I'm sure there's someone out there who can explain exactly how that's a trick by Trump to push us further down the path of fascism, authoritarianism, and his dictatorial status. So, I want to talk about the executive order that was released by Trump, issued by Trump yesterday about the Department of Education. We're going to get into education. Look, I know that there's a lot of emotion out there. I know. Listen, I am conservative, but I am not bitter. I am not here to gloat. I don't take any pleasure in the pain of people who believe in things differently than I believe. That doesn't do it for me. I'm out there advocating, pushing for things that I believe to be good and true for this country. That's what I do. I can tell you that this might shock some of you to hear me say this, but I'm not always correct. I mean, again, I've said this before. You might think that that's impossible, that I'm always correct, and I would understand that. I'm sympathetic. I'm kidding. Take it easy, leftists. I'm sympathetic to that point of view. But I don't know everything. But I do know there are things that we have learned, and I talk about this routinely. I won't get into it. I won't repeat myself too much, but just to reiterate key components of what I think it takes to become someone who is a limited government, conservative, constitutionalist, libertarian, if you will, whatever you want to call these things. At some point, these terms mean whatever they mean to the individual, but someone who believes in smaller government and that sort of thing, proclaiming truth is a necessary thing. It's necessary. If we don't proclaim the truth, if we don't teach the truth, then the purveyors of lies will be happy to swoop in, I should say, and to simply malign the people who are pushing for truth, or they will distort reality, anything that it takes to get people to advance the radical left's morally bankrupt and absolutely broken worldview. So we have to do these things when we've uncovered or when we've had truth revealed to us, then we've got to stand firmly on that. That's what we're going to do today. So I want to see this government restored to its founding the way that it was set up by the founders to operate. That's what I want. I want more liberty for you. Even if you disagree with me, you can use your liberty to go out there and disagree with me vociferously. Go for it. Have at it. But I want you to have more liberty, more of your money, more control over your life. I want less bureaucracy. I want less corruption. I want more control locally at the state level, at the local level, and most importantly, at the individual of your, at the individual level, your life level. So that's what we want to talk about here today. And before I get to that, my friends, let's just take a moment here to talk about something that should be important to all of us, and that's our heart health. When was the last time you thought about your cholesterol, your heart health? If you're like most people, it's probably been a while. Or maybe you thought about it when I mentioned this in a previous episode. But you know that ignoring cholesterol, ignoring concerns about that, your heart's health, does not make it go away. It's one of the reasons I take Solti, and I think you should consider it too. Solti is an all-natural, clinically proven dietary supplement that lowers cholesterol. Science has spoken on this, my friends. There's no prescriptions, there's no doctor's visits, just 2 Solti soft gels each day. It's simple, it's safe, it's effective. Your family needs you healthy, your church needs you strong, your business, where you work, they all need you, but we need you here in this country as well. As we talk about these issues on this program, we need people who are going to take this and not just intellectually absorb it, but actually begin to implement it and do something with the information, to do something with the belief to restore this country. You can't do that, my friends, if you're not healthy. So don't put it off. Take control of your health today. All you have to do is go to Solti.com, SOLTEA, use promo code TODD, and you will save 50% off your order, off that first 3-month supply. It's very inexpensive. It's a great investment. And you can test your levels before and after, cholesterol levels. You'll get free shipping as well if you use promo code TODD. Again, Solti.com, SOLTEA, promo code TODD gets you those special prices. All right. So let's begin here by looking at this executive order itself. This was issued yesterday, March 20th. Here's the headline of this thing: Improving Education Outcomes by Empowering Parents, States, and Communities. Echoing what we just talked about. Right? So we want a government that is of, by, and for the people. We want a society that respects individual liberty. Again, as I've said on this program before, as they used to teach me in school, I don't know if they teach this anymore. I'm sure somebody does, but I don't know if they teach this all over the place anymore. But my freedom to swing my arm ends where someone else's nose begins. That's the general rule here as to how this works, how freedom works. I can do what I want unless it's directly impacting and affecting someone else. And I don't mean just impacting someone's feelings or emotions, but literally their life, liberty, property, pursuit of happiness. That is what needs to happen. And the best way to do that is to give as much power, retain as much power, I should say. We don't give it. The power isn't given, not by people anyway. The power is given by Almighty God. You have certain unalienable rights. Among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And you get to choose how you live your life. And we, instead of the government empowering us, we actually empower the government. That's the whole purpose of the Constitution, telling that government what we were empowering it to do. And so Trump here, the Trump administration, is trying to say, look, let's take the power of the federal government and put it back where it belongs. Back to the people, back to the states, back to the community. That's what this order is about. So let me read this. By the authority vested in me as president, by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, and to enable parents, teachers, and communities to best ensure student success, it is hereby ordered, and And then there's a couple of sections. This is not very long. There's 3 sections. Section 1, purpose and policy. Our nation's bright future relies on empowered families, engaged communities, and excellent educational opportunities for every child. Now, surely we can all agree with that. Whatever is coming after this, I understand there's going to be disagreement. That is okay. You're free to disagree with this stuff. You're free to go to your state house or to your school district with signs and protest. You can go to social media and say how terrible this is. You can message me and tell me how awful I am for supporting this sort of thing, or vice versa. That's what we're here for. So, but I would venture to say everybody agrees with that first sentence. You want to, our future of our nation relies on empowered families, engaged communities, and excellent educational opportunities for every child. I think if people could get out of politics and if they didn't know where this was coming from, people would agree with that statement, right? Now, unfortunately, the executive order continues here. The experiment of controlling American education through federal programs and dollars and the unaccountable bureaucracy those programs and dollars support has plainly failed our children, our teachers, and our families. This I agree with. I think that there are some people that just got upset by this particular part of the order because they think that America needs to have federal programs and federal dollars managing education. Now, let me pause. As you know, if you've listened to this program for some time, let me say this first too. I only tell these stories because it's my experience. It's how I learn things. It's, just the experience that I've learned. I'm sharing stories and anecdotes and just how I got to believe and understand the things that I do. Everybody has their own path. I happened to go to Butler University. In fact, I've got the sweatshirt. I glanced down, I got the sweatshirt on today. I went to Butler. I do not think, hear me say this, I don't think the left will tell you this. If a leftist who has a program or has a microphone somewhere or is on stage or is in office, if they went to a school, they don't say that they don't say that what I'm about to say, which is that doesn't mean anything. It just means it was my way of learning. I studied political science at Butler University. That's what I did. I spent a semester at American University. I had some knucklehead on social media. I just stated that to give context for something I was going to say. And someone says, what'd they say? I mean, just idiotic comments, things that make me laugh when I even take the time to read the stupidity. But something about I'm not bragging about it. This is just my experience. I'm just telling you these things because it's giving you context of how, of where I was. And, when I tell the story, it's just part of the story. So when I was at Butler, I remember talking, I studied political science, I studied philosophy. We argued about things. Believe it or not, I was actually very quiet in those classrooms. I was not so quiet when I went to American University, and I was the lone vocal conservative Christian in the class. But that was not the part of my Butler education. But we would talk about, in our classes, we would talk about different things, and there's a term that comes up, and I just want to share it with you. Many of you have heard this. Some of you maybe haven't, and that's okay. It's totally fine. That's why we do this. But there is a term called the laboratory of the states. The laboratory of the states. There's a concept in the Constitution, this idea of federalism, states' rights. And so even though federal law does, according to the Constitution, supersede state law, there are things that are not specifically under the purview of the federal government. States can make their own laws. So if there's 2 laws about something and the federal government has jurisdiction, if you will, it's something that is a federal power or something that is relevant for the federal government to be involved with, that law will supersede state law. Likewise, constitutional law supersedes statutes. So if a law is written that violates the Constitution, even a federal law, it can be struck down if it is found to be in violation of a constitutional issue or component or what have you. But there's this idea that says the states should manage as much of the day-to-day, I guess, issues of their communities as possible. And what does that allow for? That allows for there to be what we used to call the laboratories of the states. So one state might try to deal with an issue, in one particular way. Another state might have a similar way, but slightly different. Another state might try something different altogether. And this idea is that is how it's like if you're in marketing, right? You're in marketing, you do A/B testing. You send out a marketing message or an offer or whatever. You test it against another offer. I got 3% response to this one. I got 1% response to this one. Let's work on picking the one that's performing better, and let's see if we can even make it better than that. That's the idea, right? It's how so much of how we live our real lives operates. I mean, any number of things, right? You can say, I coach the soccer team. I coach our girls in soccer. I am not a soccer coach. I'll tell you that. I coach basketball. I'm more of a basketball coach because I played basketball my entire life. I understand it better. I never played soccer, but there are things that I can apply to soccer that come from just being someone who played sports for a big chunk of their lives. There's angles and positioning that I learned in football that apply to soccer without the tackling. But depends on who's out there on the pitch, and it's a pitch. That's another thing. It's a pitch and not a field. But there are things that I can learn, but I'm constantly improving. I'm trying to improve anyway, and I'll figure out, what I tried there didn't work. Let me adjust this. This is how we live our entire lives. I mean, we try if we're trying to improve at something, if we're measuring something and trying to make it, be more productive at it, we try to improve. And one of the ways to do that most efficiently is to let states make their own decisions. This should go without saying. The danger of a one-size-fits-all experiment, if you will, one-size-fits-all bureaucracy that says this is how you do things, is that there's really no mechanism for improvement. In fact, I would argue that the pressure in that environment is to improve nothing. Because here's what happens, and this is a case study. You can go back and look. I think I did see the numbers. I think I deleted those. But the Department of Education spending has increased, I want to say it was around 300% since it was founded in the late 1970s when Jimmy Carter was president. But the results, there's not been measurable progress really anywhere, as is the case with most federal programs. I mean, you take a look at the War on Poverty by Lyndon Baines Johnson, mid-60s, early to mid-60s. It hasn't produced any noticeable improvement. We're right where we were, and we've spent trillions at this point of dollars on this. That's not the Department of Education. That's the War on Poverty. But it's the same sort of thing. And what happens is you have people, intellectuals, who say, we've sat down, we've done the studies, the science has spoken, this is the best way to do it, and we're going to go this route. And then when it doesn't produce the results that they tell us it's going to produce, which it inevitably never does, inevitably it fails every time, instead of going back to the drawing board. Now listen, I understand that there have been different things that people have tried in education, but it's always like, we're going to try this one thing for all of the schools, period. And then you've got people who say, well, the reason it didn't work was because we didn't have enough money. And then they go out and they have a campaign. Don't you care about our kids? Why don't you give us more money? They're telling us they just need a little bit more money to achieve what they needed to achieve because they've got this perfect plan. And we have cycles of this. That'll cycle through for a few years. Then we realize there's new, folks that are elected. There's new ideas, so they try something else. But it's always under this top-down kind of approach. It's always under the Department of Education is going to kind of manage this. They're going to hand out money for people who, are effectively doing the programs and under the direction of the Department of Education. And that's not a good way to do this. So going back to the executive order here, taxpayers spent around $200 billion at the federal level on schools during the COVID-19 pandemic, on top of the more than $60 billion they spend annually on federal school funding. This money is largely distributed by one of the newest cabinet agencies, the Department of Education, which has existed for less than 1/5 of our nation's history. Now, what are they saying here? They're basically saying, look, there's good amount of money floating around here. It's about 4% of the budget as reported in lots of places and in the numbers as I have studied them and looked at them. But we have a decent chunk of money floating around here, and this is an agency that's only existed for about 1/5 of our nation's entire history. In other words, what did we do for the other 80% of America's history? We didn't have this. We didn't have this agency. We didn't have the funding required to run this agency, yet we still had people that were being educated at the same basic levels as they are today. What's going on here? This doesn't make any sense. This is not a fundamental part of America's structure of how America was founded to operate. This is a department that can stay or go, and if it's not functioning properly, if it's not helping us do what we need to do, it needs to go. That's kind of the position, I suppose, my friends. So going back to the order here, the Congress created the Department of Education in 1979 at the urging of President Jimmy Carter, who received a first ever presidential endorsement from the country's largest teachers union shortly after pledging to the union his support for a separate Department of Education. Now they're hinting at something else that's a problem here. You've got a federal agency that's being created, and now you've got the support of the teachers unions that are going towards the guy who said, hey, let's go ahead and start this Department of Education, which again, they're pointing out just the flaws in the thinking and the approach here. Since then, reading from the order, the Department of Education has entrenched the education bureaucracy and sought to convince America that federal control of education is beneficial. So that is a big part of this. I think this is a big part of it. A lot of what these agencies do, especially right now when they're being criticized and questioned for what they're producing, a lot of the effort, a lot of the work, a lot of the labor goes to justifying their position, justifying the existence of their agency. I saw a guy, I kid you not, I saw a man on the street interview. I don't know who was doing it. It's not intentional to leave the name out. I just don't remember. And he was going around and talking to a masked teacher at one of these protests or rallies. And he asked him, what did you accomplish this week? And actually, I don't think the guy was a teacher. He was some other federal worker. He said, I accomplished my work this week. Well, what did you accomplish? I think the guy actually said, not much. But these are the questions we care about. You have to justify the position. There's a lot of energy being spent, the position, the agency, your job. What are we paying for? The taxpayer, you're paying for this, my friends. I'm at the end of my time here for this first segment. I'm going to have to take a break. Quick timeouts in order. Pick up on the other side of the break, my friends. You're listening here to Conservative, Not Bitter Talk. I am your host, the one and only, the benevolent dictator behind the microphone here, Todd Huff. Back in just a minute.
Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast and increase your financial wisdom. You will find episodes about investments, the infinite banking concept, how to fight inflation, the financial side of retirement, and financial questions Jesse asked his girlfriend. Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast on any podcast platform or watch it on YouTube. There are new episodes of the Wealth Talks podcast weekly. Search for Wealth Talks podcast online and subscribe for free.
Looking for a knife that's more than just metal? The Rainy Forge handcrafts blades in a real coal forge, the way they were meant to be made. Every knife is meticulously crafted, hair-popping sharp, and built to last a lifetime. From hunting to cooking, we've got a blade for you. Affordable heirloom quality. Visit therainyforgeblacksmith.com and click Buy a Knife to get started. The Rainy Forge, built with tradition, ready for your adventure.
Seeking natural solutions for your health and wellness? Look no further than Garden Root Remedy. We offer handcrafted herbal tinctures, salves, teas, and more made with only the highest quality organic herbs. We provide personalized consultations to help you find the perfect herbal remedy for your specific needs. Experience the power of nature's healing touch. Visit Garden Root Remedy online at gardenrootremedy.com. That's gardenrootremedy.com. Rooted in nature, blooming with wellness.
Welcome back, my friends. Talking here about this executive order that Trump has issued regarding the Department of Education. Going through this, talking about some of the problems, some of the pitfalls that candidly we should have seen coming from this. This was released, the Department of Education was created, I should say. What is that, 45 years ago? Is that 46 years ago? So it's been a while, but it's not done much. And as this order points out, I'm going to go and read this particular sentence in it, but it says this: since the Department of Education has entrenched the education bureaucracy and sought to convince America that federal control over education is beneficial. So, while the Department of Education does not educate anyone, it maintains a public relations office that includes over 80 staffers at a cost of more than $10 million per year. So they spend a portion of their overall funds goes to just simply justifying their position, talking about, their existence, trying to convince the American people that what they're doing is providing a value, providing a service that's worth investing in. And candidly, it's not. They've not produced anything. It's a flat line. It's not any results that anyone would be proud of. Closing the Department of Education, the order continues, would provide children and their families the opportunity to escape a system that is failing them. Today, American reading and math scores are near historical lows. This year's National Assessment of Educational Progress showed that 70% of eighth graders were below proficient in reading and 72% were below proficient in math. The federal education bureaucracy is not working. 70% failure rate as far as eighth graders being proficient in reading and math. 72% are below proficiency in math. 70% of eighth graders are below proficiency in reading. In what universe is that, my friends, a success story? It is an obvious failure. It's an obvious failure. We played this game for 45 years. It's flatlined, or if anything, gotten a little bit worse. Who's defending this? What is the big deal about this? We haven't suddenly decided that American children are not going to be educated. We're simply saying the way that we're doing it is not working, and it's going to be changed. That's what this is. Now, the order says this: closure of the Department of Education would drastically improve program implementation in higher education. The Department of Ed currently manages a student loan debt portfolio of more than $1.6 trillion with a T. That's a ton of money. This means the federal student aid program is roughly the size of one of the nation's largest banks, Wells Fargo. But although Wells Fargo has more than 200,000 employees, the DOE has fewer than 1,500 in its Office of Federal Student Aid. So the DOE is not a bank, and it must return bank functions to an entity equipped to serve America's students. Ultimately, the department's main functions can and should be returned to the states. So that's the core. That's section 1 of this. So returning this back to the states, doing what I alluded to earlier, which is supporting this notion, this American idea that there is a laboratory of the states. And this laboratory allows each state to do what it wants to do in regards to issues and, issues that are important to our country, to our future, to our children, to the people, in the case of education. And each state can do what it sees fit, and each state can learn from the other state and make improvements instead of a top-down, one-size-fits-all, you do it this way or else mentality. So, got more to say about this. We continue going through this here today, but Let me remind you that this program is growing. This week, we just launched in Portland, Oregon. And if you're new to our show, welcome to the program. I am glad to have you here. We're looking at adding a station in Las Vegas here in short order and looking at possibly others as well. I want to say thank you to those of you who have been with us and helped us grow from the beginning in some cases, nearly 10 years ago. And I want to say welcome to the new folks. But as we've been growing, as we've been developing the program, there's other things that we are doing here at the Todd Huff Show. One of those things is to provide some additional content, some additional just training, just some more things to help people become, as I like to say, better conservative communicators, better educated conservatives, not bitter. Right? It's easy to throw our hands up and say, what are we trying for? Right now, I look at the landscape and I say, we have a great opportunity to seize upon this. And so we've got a lifetime membership to our inner circle where we'll be providing exclusive content, behind the scenes updates, live video, all kinds of stuff like that. And even a welcome call, phone call for me to welcome you to the program for new members who become lifetime members. The lifetime membership investment is just $99. You can go to toddhuffshow.com/join for more information and to secure your spot today. You can also text the word join, JOIN. You can text that to 317-210-2830. Again, toddhuffshow.com/join or text the word join to 317-210-2830. It's called the Inner Circle. That's our membership program. It's going to launch here later in the spring, but we're taking founding members who want to be a lifetime member for just $99. That's forever. That's for as long as you're here and the program is in existence. That's what we're going to be doing. So there you go. Let's get back to this. Section 2 of this executive order here, closing the Department of Education and returning authority to the states. This is a core component. By the way, for those who tell me that Trump is not a conservative, this is a core conservative principle. This is a core principle of what it means to be a conservative, a limited government type, a libertarian type. I remember listening to an old video of the great economist, Milton Friedman, and he listed, someone asked him, all of the agencies that exist in the federal government, which ones do we need to keep? Which ones do we need to get rid of? Basically, Milton Friedman said we need 4.5 agencies in the federal government. And the Department of Education is one that he said needs cut. These folks who are principled, ideological conservatives or libertarian types have been calling for the end of the Department of Education for some time for lots of reasons. One, the Department of Education has not been productive. Two, it's a colossal waste of money. There's a better way to do it for reasons that I've hit upon earlier a moment ago, but also for things I haven't even gotten to, but to return that authority to the state. And that's what Trump is doing here, which is in line with conservative principles. It's in line with the Constitution. I just feel like that needs to be said to balance out all of the freakouts, the blowing out of proportions, anything Trump says, anything Trump tweets or whatever, calling him a dictator and so forth. This is not what dictators do. You don't give authority back to the states. This is silly to suggest that that's what Trump is, but that's never stopped the left at any time in the past. So here's what it says. The Secretary of Education shall, to the maximum extent appropriate and permitted by law, see, there you go, following the law is in this order, right? It's right there for everyone to see. The Secretary shall take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education and return authority over education to the states and local communities while ensuring the effective and uninterrupted delivery of services, programs, and benefits on which Americans rely. So see, here's the thing. You hear the left, you hear the teachers out there who are protesting. They'll say things like, well, this is, children with disabilities. The only way in the universe that someone who's a child, a student with disabilities, the only conceivable way that they can get any service is through the Department of Education. But if you read the order here, the order is to take the steps to close the DOE, but at the same time, ensuring that the services are uninterrupted, that they remain effective, the programs, the services, the benefits on which they rely, just they're being transferred to somebody else, right? It's like if you work at a company and you've got a new boss, and the new boss is coming in and the old boss is going out. And sometimes these things happen in the blink of an eye. Someone gets fired and you have a new boss the next day. But sometimes there's a transition, especially when it comes to transition of ownership. And there's a process. I had a friend who was in a position of transition. He was a general manager of a utility. And there was a period of time where he basically evolved, if you will, into taking over the full scope of the job. There was a period of transition where he had stuff to learn. And they didn't say we're going to stop providing the water to the community until the new guy figures it out. There was a transition. This is not hard to understand for anybody who cares to understand it. Now, it doesn't mean that there won't be hiccups and problems or anything like that, or that everything will just work fine. But again, what are we comparing that against? We're comparing it against something that is, in my estimation, and I think an objective estimation, something that has been a colossal failure for the American people. Quick time out, my friends. Got to take a break up against the clock. Back here in just a minute.
Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast and increase your financial wisdom. You will find episodes about investments, the infinite banking concept, how to fight inflation, the financial side of retirement, and financial questions Jesse asked his girlfriend. Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast on any podcast platform or watch it on YouTube. There are new episodes of the Wealth Talks podcast weekly. Search for Wealth Talks podcast online and subscribe for free.
Looking for a knife that's more than just metal? The Rainy Forge handcrafts blades in a real coal forge, the way they were meant to be made. Every knife is meticulously crafted, hair-popping sharp, and built to last a lifetime. From hunting to cooking, we've got a blade for you. Affordable heirloom quality. Visit therainyforgeblacksmith.com and click Buy a Knife to get started. The Rainy Forge, built with tradition, ready for your adventure.
Tired of store-bought produce? Ever dreamed of growing your own healthy food but worried about space? Exo Hydroponics is a perfect solution. Exo Hydroponics is a family-owned business run by a mother and daughter team. Their innovative Exo Tower lets you grow up to 28 plants indoors or out, using less than 2 square feet. Visit exotowers.com today and start your journey to growing fresh organic food at home. That's exotowers.com.
Welcome back, my friends. Just talking about this executive order that President Trump has signed as of yesterday. There's, of course, overreaction and panic and protest and all this kind of stuff, which, again, people are free to do. I'm not here to stop any of it. If they are engaging, again, in a protest becoming a riot, if that is to happen, then that's, of course, the obvious line to be drawn. But people should be able to communicate their ideas, their frustrations, their concerns. I'm just going to tell you what's in this thing, and you can decide for yourself what you think about this. So, going back to this Section 2 of the executive order, it says this: consistent with the Department of Education's authorities, the Secretary of Education shall ensure the allocation of any federal Department of Education funds is subject to rigorous compliance with federal law and administration policy, including the requirement that any program or activity receiving federal assistance terminate illegal discrimination obscured under the label diversity, equity, and inclusion, or similar terms in programs promoting gender ideology. So that's in this as well. So this is, hey, we are transferring this power, but we're making sure that these funds are going to be used to comply with federal law, with the policy of the executive branch, and we're going to make sure that anything that's related to DEI, anything that's related to these gender ideology programs, they're not going to get tucked away into this and snuck in and, somehow not be cut and eliminated. We're going to pay attention there is the point. So, and then there's, I would say some technical stuff. Basically, there's just some legalese at the end, general provisions of the order. So that's the order. That's the direction that we're headed. I think it's a good thing. Now, Linda McMahon also had a statement. She's the Secretary of Education. Here's what she said. Today's executive order is a history-making action by President Trump to free future generations of American students and forge opportunities for their success. We are sending education back to the states where it so rightly belongs. Again, the education is not going to cease. The education is not going to close up tomorrow. The way that we are doing it is going to be restructured. This has been badly needed for a long time. It has been ignored. It has been excused. It's finally time for the nation's bureaucrats who are responsible for basically running a cash cow that's producing nothing in return. Nothing in return. It's time for them to be held accountable. And for the problem to be remedied by giving education back to the states instead of saying the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. can come up with some one-size-fits-all solution, whatever that means, the way we're going to fund it, the way that we're going to, have certain funds that are tied to certain sorts of programs and so forth. We're going to give that back to the states. States can figure this out. The statement here says, education is fundamentally a state responsibility. Instead of filtering resources through layers of federal red tape, we will empower states to take charge and advocate for and implement what is best for students, families, and educators in their communities. Closing the Department of Education does not mean cutting off funds from those who depend on them. We will continue to support K through 12 students with special needs, there you go, college student borrowers, and others who rely on essential programs. We're going to follow the law and eliminate the bureaucracy responsibly by working through Congress to ensure a lawful and orderly transition. There's more to this, but you get the idea. I'm running out of time this particular hour. So them's the facts, my friends. This is how this is structured. There's nothing in the order that says, hey, good luck, see you later. That's not what's happening here. What's happening here is the recognition that what we've been doing has not been working. And because it's not been working, we are going to make a change. We're going to make a change that fundamentally, look, the education is not a constitutional responsibility that the American people have given to the federal government. It has been taken by the federal government when Congress passed the law under the leadership or the urging, the prompting of Jimmy Carter back in 1979. But children were educated before. Children will be educated after. This is not about trying to punish students. This is not some scheme to help millionaires and billionaires or whatever nonsense they're going to be out there proclaiming. This is about fixing problems. This is about putting education back where it belongs at the state and local level. It's about fixing a bureaucratic mess. It's about more than that, too. I've got a soundbite from Stephen Miller where he articulates who these folks are that have been running the Department of Education. I've got that we'll get to in the next segment, but this is what's happening. I am in support of this. I understand that not everybody is, but I'm in support of this not because I want anybody to suffer, not because I think that, I don't celebrate the people who are saddened by this or concerned by this. I'm just not. By the way, I was a school board member. It's been a long time ago, but I've seen that side of this as well. Back in the early 2000s. So I do have that experience as well. But this is something that is good and necessary. But I've got to stop talking here because I'm at the end of the segment. SDG, my friends.
Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast and increase your financial wisdom. You will find episodes about investments, the infinite banking concept, how to fight inflation, the financial side of retirement, and financial questions Jesse asked his girlfriend. Listen to the Wealth Talks podcast on any podcast platform or watch it on YouTube. There are new episodes of the Wealth Talks podcast weekly. Search for Wealth Talks podcast online and subscribe for free.
At FurnitureMadeInUSA.com, we provide beautiful chairs, rockers, stools, and tables handcrafted by skilled American artisans in North Carolina since 1924. With every purchase, you're supporting American businesses, American workers, and their families. Don't just buy furniture, invest in a piece of American history. Shop now at FurnitureMadeInUSA.com.